About It. I am your host, Varan Tyler. Joining with me today, he is an author, businessman, and tour guide of Savannah, Georgia, Mr. Ellis Garvin. Welcome to the show, Mr. Garvin.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. You've written a book titled A Guide to Our Two Savannahs. Explain to the viewers what that means, because I have never heard that before.
Any town you go on or any city, there's at least two. We have the haves and we have the have-nots. And trust me, a lot of us, we move in circles that never meet each other, unless maybe on the job. But we never socialize together. And that's just one way of separating ourselves. Money is certainly steps in, and then there are other things that do it. But just my book was written with one thing in mind, to enlighten people about Savannah. And if I would think that all of us were the same, then I would be misled or misleading our readers.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, the book was written because I seen so many people say things about Savannah that was certainly untrue, not even near the truth, about Oglethorpe and also about General Sherman. Those are the first things. And then when I went to school, I had a classmate who used to own a tour company. And she just kept asking me, why don't you get your tour license and become a guide? You make a great guide. And after about 3 years of that, I really went and took the test and I became a tour guide.
Wow, that is awesome. So let me ask you this, how long you been a tour guide?
I've been a guide now for about 6 years.
Wow. So you've seen people from all over the world, basically.
Yes, I have. I've seen people come here from England, from other Scandinavian countries, a few from Africa, and all from all over the United States of America.
Wow, that is so awesome. This is a guide to our two Savannahs. Mr. Ellis, could you kind of explain to the viewers, this is an awesome book. It is beautifully done. Also, you have a full color DVD that comes with it. Can you explain to the viewers what caused you to pen this book?
Well, as I said, there were so many misconceptions about Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually a driving tour guide of Savannah.
Okay.
And we don't just take in the downtown historic district, we take into some of the poorer neighborhoods. We take you all the way out to the Tybee Islands, the lighthouse. And you can get in your car with another person. And I don't just tell you about Savannah, I tell you every turn to make in Savannah. So you can take this guide yourself, and those that buy my book. If you're not going to visit Savannah, the next best thing is a guide down to Savannahs. And not only do I tell you about Savannah, but I take you through all the squares, the original 24 squares of Savannah. There's a question and answer section in the book. There's also a bibliography in there, like for people that read the book and would like to know more about Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
You can pick books from that list. Also, there's an index, like once you've never been in Savannah, you can go to the index and find something. So like the fountain that turns green on St. Patrick's Day in Forsyth Park.
Talk about that a little bit, because my husband and I, we are originally from Jacksonville, Florida. And one of our former pastors had told us about a restaurant here at the Riverwalk called Huey's that sell awesome seafood. And so right after that, my husband and I, we took a vacation and we came down that weekend. And we was like amazed because we had never been to Savannah. And once the Lord transitioned us in this area, we started going down by the Riverwalk. We haven't seen a whole lot of Savannah. We're still, trying to get familiar with it. But we was able to see the St. Patrick's Day, what you're speaking about the river being turned green. That was something that we had never seen before. Expound on that a little bit.
Well, each year, the St. Patrick's Day parade here in Savannah is the second largest in the country, New York being number one. And here with the little elfin magic, just before St. Patrick's Day, which is the 17th of March, with some elfin magic, the water just happens to turn green.
Hmm.
And it's been doing it ever since I've been here in Savannah. I've been here now about 37 years.
That's a long time.
And each year it seems to get, that parade gets larger and larger. Everyone goes out and have a good time. In fact, everybody in Savannah on St. Patrick's Day is Irish. And you can see that from all the beads and green that they have on.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And you just said something that was very profound. You said that on that day, on that particular day, everybody become Irish.
Well, they act just like the Irish. They have on the caps,
Mm-hmm.
they have on the green, they have on the beads, and they're out there drinking beer and other liquids to make them feel better.
You're so right about that now. You're so right about that. And you see people dressed like leprechauns as well.
Yes, we
Yes,
do.
sir. Yes, sir.
In fact, Budweiser's Clydesdales are always here on St. Patrick's Day, and you'll see them in the parade.
Wow. And I'm sure they sell a lot of Budweiser during that time.
I would imagine they would.
Amen. 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 Well, what is the particular passage of this book that you penned that that is really dear to your heart? I'm sure that all of it is because it's the historicity of Savannah, but what is a specific part of this book that is really dear to your heart?
I guess that might be two things. Number one, many people of Savannah believe that since Oglethorpe started up the colony of Georgia in 1733, and it was supposed to be a non-slave colony. So by doing that, many people seem to think that Oglethorpe himself was against slavery. But that's completely wrong. Oglethorpe himself was a trustee on the Georgia board of the colony of Georgia, and the trustees were not allowed to own property in Georgia. But in South Carolina, he owned several plantations and he owned many slaves, so he was certainly not against slavery.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, he was also the lieutenant governor of the Royal African Trading Company, and that was the arm that the British had in the slave trade. They brought slaves from the west coast of Africa to the New World. So he was certainly not against slavery.
Right.
The colony of Georgia was started as a buffer zone for the colony of South Carolina, because the Spaniards owned Florida at the time, and the Spaniards had a fort in Florida that anyone came there, slave or otherwise, all they had to do was become Catholics, and they would be free. So Oglethorpe certainly wanted to stop that. In fact, he led several raids into Florida trying to take that fort, which he never did.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. And there's another item is most people seem to think that General Sherman was a pyromaniac. He just started fires anywhere and everywhere he went.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also wrong. In 1884, when he left Atlanta, or rather just before leaving Atlanta, he had 82,000 troops. He split them in two columns. He sent one to Augusta.
Mm-hmm.
He sent one to Savannah. And he called all of his officers together, and he told them not to go in anyone's houses. However, take anything and everything that you need for your troops, which would mean like wagons, mules, horses, grain, whatever they needed, pigs, cows. And they did that.
Mm-hmm.
But he said not to go inside anyone's houses. But should anyone fire on the troops, return fire and burn them to the ground, everything they have to the ground.
Wow.
But most of the burning, he didn't do it, or his troops. Most of the burning was done by the people themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because Confederates took out ads in all of the newspapers telling them when they saw the Union troops coming to burn, destroy anything and everything that would be helpful to them, like bridges.
Mm-hmm.
If they had supplies, destroy them.
Wow. So he didn't play.
Well, he didn't play, but he wasn't a guy that did a lot of destroying just for the sake of destroying.
Right. He had a purpose and a reason.
Right. And when he came into Savannah on the 17th of December, 1864, many people seem to think that the ladies in Savannah would go out and bake cookies and give them to the troops.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's not true. Many women in Savannah didn't even like the troops because this is a conquering army.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't good for them. And the women didn't give the cookies away. They went out and sold cookies to the troops because they didn't have any money. Confederate money wasn't worth anything.
Wow.
So they went out and sold cookies to gain money to buy supplies for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Mr. Garvin, as reading your book, you have a chapter in here talking about the Savannah Cotton Exchange. Could you elaborate on that a little bit, sir?
The Cotton Exchange is on Bay Street, and it's called the Cotton Exchange because there's where the guys that sold and bought cotton had their offices, and they needed office space on Bay Street, they needed warehouse space down on River Street, and they needed a passageway to get down to River from Bay Street to get to the ships. And this is why you see, in fact, the Cotton Exchange is one of the first buildings to use airspace in Savannah. And these it's called Factors Walk is actually their address to that building. And if you go downtown, you'll see these long passageways that go from Bay Street over to the buildings themselves.
Right.
And then the wagons would go under these passageways. And that was the first use of airspace here in Savannah, was the Cotton Exchange.
Now, let me ask you this. Down up underneath that, because we viewed in that, toured in that area, were the stones, like is that the bricks that's made down there? Now, has that been always like that?
No, it wasn't like that when they first got here.
Okay.
There's two kinds of stones on River Street.
Okay.
The ones that actually paved the streets are cobblestones. They are cut that way at the quarry.
Mm-hmm.
But on the passageway that go from Bay Street, or rather from River Street up to Bay Street, those are ballast stones. Those are stones that came here on the ships from England, because most of those ships were empty, and they put the stones on to weigh them down so they would stand the weather of the seas. And oddly enough, Savannah had to begin to pay for these stones when the British found out that they were using them to pave the streets.
Wow.
Also, when people came into the colony of Georgia, African Americans had to pay a fee to register to work. They had to have a...
Wait a minute, I want to interrupt you right there. You said that they had to pay to work?
Free African Americans that came to the colony of Georgia. When they came to Georgia, they had to pay a fee to work. They also had to have a white guardian, and they also paid more taxes, and they also had to donate 2 to 3 days a week on public works. And all of the stones that you see downtown that's holding up Bay Street from falling on the River Street, and the ramps going up and down, those are public works. And freed slaves are the ones that did most of that work.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, and that's, it lets you know we ought to be so appreciative, and our children need to know this history from which we came from, because that's never unheard of to have to pay, to work. You most the way it is now, we give our time and we get paid now, but to pay and to in order to work, that is something. That is something. I sure appreciate it. Listen, I recommend this book. This is a lot of history that is penned by Mr. Garvin. If you're ever in the Savannah area, please, by all means, look this man of God up, this businessman, this author, Mr. Ellis Garvin. Mr. Garvin, where can the book be purchased at this time for our viewers?
You can buy the book at Amazon.com.
Okay.
Barnes & Noble, Schaefer's here in Savannah, The Book Lady. You can also get it at Beach Institute. You can also get it at the Visitor Center on MLK. Also on MLK, you can get it at Diaspora, that Mr. Shinholster owns a store there, Diaspora. You can get it there.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll one day get it in the Civil Rights Museum.
Well, we're going to believe God with you that this will get into the Civil Rights Museum because it's well needed. Amen. Mr. Garvin, you also have something else that you're presenting, and it's called, now this is something that many people have heard the saying, and many people have not heard the saying of a 40 acres and a mule. Could you elaborate a little bit about the 40 acres and a mule?
The 40 acres and a mule was one of the most important events in the Civil War era. That took place in January the 12th, 1865.
Mm-hmm.
And there's where Sherman called 20 of the African American leaders together at the Green Meldrum House. And Secretary of War Stanton was there, and he was actually in charge of the meeting. And while he was there, he asked the people, what could we do? What could the government do for you to make you become independent?
Mm-hmm.
And they told him, if we had land, we could work the land and eventually pay it off,
Mm-hmm.
and also save a little and also support ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And Stanton took about 3 days it took him to convince General Sherman to write that 40 acres and a mule promise. And it was to give each person 40 acres of land and a mule. And the Army had a lot of surplus mules because the war was just about over at that time. And the lands that they had was going to go from Charleston almost to Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and 30 miles from the coast inland. And they would get 40 acres and a mule. And eventually some of the people did get it. And the minister of First Bryant, he led a group into Skidaway,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually settled a town there. And the town, everything was going well, but then on April the 14th of the same year
Mm-hmm.
that this event took place, Lincoln was assassinated.
Wow.
And him being assassinated, Johnson was his vice president, and he became president.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't share Lincoln's feelings about the ex-slaves, so he rescinded most of the orders, and all of the land that was given away, these 40 acres and a mule,
Mm-hmm.
they gave them 1 year to get off the land. So they had to give up the land that they had already got, and had been working for that 1 year.
Wow. Wow. That is just so much history. And to know that Savannah has so much history, that is so awesome. You know, that is so awesome. And then you are well diverse in the historicity of Savannah. That is such a blessing. I also see that you have a fundraiser for those that come into the area of Savannah. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, that's a simple thing. Like, for instance, people can buy 25 or more copies of my book, or a combination of copies of my book and the poster.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll step on their bus and give them a free tour of Savannah. Now, what makes the poster, in my opinion, so important is if you would just think of how fast things have changed. That poster was the end of slavery, and just 143 years later, Barack Obama is residing at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So these are things that we all need to be. That poster should be in every home.
Absolutely.
In fact, I've talked to Dr. Lockamy, who is in charge of the education here in Chatham County. And I've also went out and talked to Cheryl Dozer, the president of Savannah State College. I talked to her assistant and suggested to all of them that a poster need to be in every one of the classrooms. Because if our students know about their past, I think they'd feel better about themselves. And the better we feel about ourselves and the more we know about our past, the brighter our future will be.
I absolutely agree with you. I really do. Wow, that is awesome. That is awesome. So I noticed that you, when you're talking about the combination of the two, now this is not just for people that are coming in. This is for groups like private groups, church groups, and family reunions as well.
This is for anyone that comes in Savannah, have their own bus, a church, local churches, churches from out of town, anyone. They come in, I'll step on their bus and give them a free tour. Should they pay the wholesale price for these books? That's if someone wanted to raise funds, like a church, and wanted to raise funds, they pay me the wholesale price, sell the book at the retail price, and I'll still step on the bus and give them a free tour in groups of 25 or more.
That is an awesome deal. You have something else that I see that you made the Savannah Morning News. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I went back to school after I retired. And one of my teachers, he actually works for the Savannah Morning News. And he asked one of his friends to come out and do a story on me. And he did a story when the book was first completed. And I think he called the article a one-man show because I took all the pictures in the book.
Wow.
I did all the writing. I'm the guy that went around and got in all the different stores the books are in. So he said, well, you're a one-man show. And
absolutely, I agree.
That's what he called it. But there's another thing that you came up, you asked about the cotton exchange. When we first started, I think you said something about the two Savannahs. You didn't know there were two Savannahs.
Right, I did.
Well, that's a good example of the two Savannahs. The cotton exchange is now the Masonic temple, and the Masonic members go to that temple, and those are the ones that are non-African American go to the one on Bay Street. And they have it open on occasion, and you can go in there and they have some artifacts, and it's really worth seeing. But African Americans, their Masonic temple is on East Broad. So there you can actually see the difference where we have these two Savannahs. And some of these people, I'm sure, they work together. Because a lot of people work at International Paper now, which used to be Union Camp. But Masonic members that are non-African American go to that one there on Bay Street. African Americans go to one on East Broad.
Wow, wow. Well, you have really helped us a lot. And I'm sure that the viewers are going to be excited about getting this information. Amen?
Well, I certainly hope they would. And the more you know about these things, the better off I think you'll be. And also for the lazy people that don't like to read, they can pop the DVD in their DVD player, and I'll give you a tour of the city of Savannah.
Amen. Amen. Well, Mr. Garvin, I was about to call you Minister. Mr. Garvin, it's a pleasure to have met you, to be at your feet of a man of wealth, of knowledge and information. I thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this information with myself as well as the viewers.
Well, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Amen.
For more information, you can contact Mr. Ellis Garvin at 912-236-6503 or area code 301-848-2246. And he is in the Savannah, Georgia area. To be a guest on Let's Talk About It, go to www.letstalkaboutit.com. Fill out the contact information form below. Until then, you go with God, and God will surely go with you. Be blessed.